University. And it was done by one of our faculty members many, many years ago, who has done murals all around the country that depict this kind of history. These are determined to be the most valuable art in the city of Atlanta, by appraisal and by value and by positioning in history. And through these doors, if you won't get to see the Latin, make sure that you get in there before you go. Are the CAU galleries. We have some of the finest art representing Africa, African Americans, and Oceania that you'll find anywhere. So we want you to enjoy that. Now, just outside of this building, on the lawn where you're going to go, one of the locations out there is where students used to gather to march downtown for the sit-ins and the civil rights protests back in the beginning, actually in the 50s, but then into the 60s and beyond. So there's a lot of history out there. And a little bit further down that lawn is the burial place of John Hope, who was a Morehouse president for most of Morehouse's early history. But once he became the president of Atlanta University, he is the one who built the conceptualization of what is here now, the Atlanta University Center, and spent the next several years on this very, very torrid building plan and bringing together all the institutions that are now here. So his conception back in the 20s and into the 30s was that there should be, in addition to a selective admissions institution for women, one for men, there should be an open admissions institution for co-eds, and there should be a limited admission institution for co-eds, and that became Clark College. They also said at that time we want a medical school, a law school, and a theological seminary. The only thing that never happened was the law school. And I know I got a couple of lawyers in the room, but that never happened. Medical school is here, that's on the other side of Morehouse. Clark College came through these parts back in that same time period. And so this is part of the conception of the entire Atlanta University Center. If you go out further down that lawn, past John Hope, as you come into this part of the campus, is a fairly new addition to the campus. And that is the bust of W.B. Du Bois. As we told you the other night, W.B. Du Bois spent 2 terms as faculty member here. And during that time, he wrote most of his major works, including The World in Africa, The Souls of Black Folks, and so many others, but including also some of his economic treatises, because it was always focused on the economy. One of the things I would challenge you to do when you get a chance, and Charles, your dean, may lead you to that, is some of his work on China. I've had conversations with several of you over the last 2 days about China and Africa. Du Bois raised the alarm about China and its approach to Africa way back beginning in the 1940s. Much of the issues that you and I have talked about, he predicted back then. But he said that the only resolution for that is for African Americans to cause America to take a more developmentally appropriate approach to how one assists the development of African nations. So he said that in the 40s, and we're still trying to cope with all that today. This institution has been a part of that history all this time. So in the 1960s, early 1960s, in a collaboration with the United Nations, the School of Business, the newly formed, I might add, the Graduate School of Business at that time, built a program for bringing young Africans from various countries in Africa to this place to learn new business practices and then move out and begin to rebuild the African continent. So you can see that this isn't just something we decided to do today. This is something that we have done historically and that we continue to think is just a critically important part of our work. So we're very pleased that you're here in this place that has always been about your growth and development and always been about the elevation of the African continent. So let me make sure you meet a few people who are here. I'm going to start with Dr. Dolores Aldridge here. Dr. Aldridge is a graduate of the original Clark College, back a little ways. But let me say that she was one of the major players here during the early part of the Civil Rights Movement in the 60s. One of the students was pressing the envelope even then. She went on, after she finished her doctorate, to become the first African-American woman on the tenure track at Emory University on the other side of town, and built, over that long period of time, the African-American Studies Department and approaches there, and has produced so many scholars just everywhere, all over this country. She is also a member of our Board of Trustees, a great scholar, retired just a couple of years ago as a distinguished scholar in a unique place that no one else at Emory occupies. And recently, she did one more thing for her institution, actually two more things. She brought forward a very large financial gift, which we are very, very pleased with. And that was substantial, but more important to those of us who deal in this work was she dedicated all of her personal and professional papers to our archives here at Clark Atlanta University. So she continues to be a very effective member of our Board of Trustees. She chairs our Academic Affairs Committee, and Dr. Heffernan will tell you she is not playing when she does that. It is serious business, and so I'm glad that you're here tonight.
Let me just say one thing, and I said I wouldn't say anything, but that's not normally me. A part of your being here is just an incredible thing. I have traveled to every country in Africa, married a Ghanaian 42 years ago, yesterday, and of course we had some wonderful experiences, and he was so imbued with the notion of giving back to Africa because he felt so strongly about his native roots. And the first school he came to, when he came to America, he went on to get 4 or 5 engineering degrees here. The first school he came to was Clark College in Atlanta, and didn't bother to tell me that till many years later. I only knew all these other places that he had gone to. So, you know, it's very, very significant for me to see this major kind of program going on, to see you here, and to know you are going to be so engrossed in the history and the development of both Clark College and Atlanta University. But let me just tell you a side note. On my way over here, I was listening to WCLK, and I started moving with the music on WCLK because it's a beautiful music. So 91.9. You know, when you get all stressed out, turn on that. And I started thinking about the La Carousel at Pascal's and how we go there and spend our social time. So that being in any academic institution, it is not simply about the academy and the intellectual, it's about balance, bringing balance to it. So as you move forward and become these great intellectual business people, whatever, then always keep in mind you need balance in your lives. Thank you.
Thank you. So out the back there, guarding the wine, is our provost, Dr. James Heffernan, whom I think most of you have met. And next to him, Dr. James Perkins, who's our Vice President for Research and Sponsored Programs, who's joined us fairly recently. Over here is Dr. Eric Mintz, who is in our science programs. He has been with me on much of our recent international activity, and certainly in Liberia, and we're trying to do a number of things to help enhance science in places like Liberia and Ghana and several others. He, among his specialties, are dealing with water resources and water supply. He's had these projects literally all over the world, dealing with how you move water from one place to another, how you keep it pure, how you distribute it, etc. So that's a resource for you as well, because I know in many of your locations, those are continuing issues that have to be addressed. In the far back over there is Dr. Stephanie Evans. She is the chair of, and I always have to take a deep breath before I say this, she's the chair of the Department of Africana Studies, Africana Women's Studies, African American Studies, and History. Gonna come up with what I do?
It's past us back there.
Oh, okay. I'll get to it. She gotta stand up and talk. And I mentioned the bust of Du Bois up there. Well, part of our reclamation of history is reclaiming W.E. Du Bois. And Dr. Evans has led that push with an international conference on Du Bois 2 years ago. It has led to a number of things. We're about to build a Du Bois Institute here, and you will be involved in that because Du Bois is about African Americans and about Africa. And we're going to press those issues very, very tight. So, Dr. Evans, I'm glad that you're here.
Welcome to the campaign.
Dr. Ratadoye in engineering, dual degree engineering, and a few other areas, sustainability. And so that's one of his interesting areas of research. But he also runs our dual degree engineering program. Our students get an engineering degree from another institution and a degree in one of the STEM disciplines from here. And then I'm going to go over here, Teresa Pascal, who is also fairly new, Vice President for Research for Institutional Advancement.
You know, this is a very small institution to go. And what seems to work here is committed people. And we've been blessed to have some very, very committed people. And I couldn't go any further, Mr. President and Trustee Aldridge, without acknowledging the faculty members who made all this possible. And Dr. Messer, Messer has worked with international agencies and parastatals for a long time. He's our guru. He knows how to do this. And he's been working on this project for a while, but kind of in secrecy. It's kind of, you see him when he hush and rush by. In about the last 6 weeks, okay, the project saw the light of day. And it took a lot of people to kind of pull it through. And it's a wonderful project. We're delighted to have you. Dr. Brown talked about the history of the Baby Center and Clark College and Clark Atlanta University and working through and with Africa. So we're very, very excited. I also want to acknowledge Dr. Ed Davis. Dr. Ed Davis is our longest serving dean. He's on hiatus now. But he's been here since
Let's put it this way. I would estimate that almost everyone in here was not homeschooled.
yeah.
And the parents had not met. But
one of the things that the dean does is the dean is really a facilitator, somebody who makes things happen. And the art of being a dean, as I've learned, is kind of getting out of the way of good people. And I've been blessed to have Ed, because he's experienced, he knows the world of deanship. And so he's always someone who's been available that I could go to if I have a question. And most of the time he smirks and laughs at me because sometimes it's very challenging. So Ed has been, and he's been involved in everything that we do. Ed is involved in. Also, I want to acknowledge my senior faculty member and dean, department chair for management and marketing, Professor Raphael Boyd. Every university, you need somebody who pays attention to details. And Raphael Boyd, you can say nothing else about him, okay, is that he is a detailed person, methodical. And he's been a real great assistant. He loves this school and has given his career to this school. So I want to acknowledge him.